Hey everyone, this podcast is part of Story Mode, the podcast network of Gamefully Unemployed. You can support us and gain access to other great exclusive podcasts at patreon.com/gamefullyunemployed. That's patreon.com/GAMEFULLY unemployed, which is spelled like it sounds. It's a house, but it's at night!
Yeah, wacky house. Hey.
Weird house. Puzzle house.
Hi, everyone.
Hello, everyone.
My name is David Bell.
My name is not. My name's Tom Ryman.
We just watched The Nighthouse.
The Nighthouse.
House for your night.
Senate House. I don't know.
All houses wherein men have lived and died are haunted houses. Through the open doors, the harmless phantoms on their errands glide, with feet that make no sound upon the floors. We meet them at the doorway, on the stair, along the passages they come and go. Impalpable impressions on the air, a sense of something moving.
Yeah, was there other things out? What was out?
Yeah,
what was out
Reminiscence was the other big one with the one that the Lisa Joy film starring Hugh Jackman.
Right.
And I think that was the only other big release this weekend. I think.
Yeah, that's getting terrible reviews.
It truly is.
Yeah, and
I've heard nothing but bad things about that movie.
Well, yeah, looking at the trailer, it's like, that can't be good.
Well, no, I disagree. I thought the trailer was like, it was interesting, but then they're really pushing it's from one of the creators of Westworld, and it's like, I don't know, maybe those Westworld people just don't know what they're doing.
This is our mini review of a movie we haven't seen. I liked the idea because I do think there's going to be an influx in nostalgia, and that premise was neat.
We're already seeing it. Yeah, we're already seeing this premise. We've been seeing this premise happen for the past 15 years on the internet.
Right. And so exploring that, but it felt like the movie got away from itself.
I don't know.
From the trailer.
We'll see.
I feel like the trailer gets away from itself. I don't know. I haven't seen the movie.
Haven't seen a movie. We're not going to review a film we haven't seen.
The point is, we chose, I think, a better path in that I think I was more interested in The Nighthouse because it is the director of The Ritual.
Yes.
He also directed, like, a VHS, the Succubus.
The Succubus one, yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's similar writers. And so this was a movie, if you remember the first time we saw it on Hypecast, we sort of was like, this looks generic and dumb.
Well, we thought it looked like the Kevin Bacon movie by David Koepp, whatever that was called. Because it has that one shot of her walking into the house and seeing herself asleep on the couch. You're like, oh, it's going to be the same, and it's not the same movie at all.
No. So what did you think of The Nighthouse?
I thought it was pretty good. It was a little smaller scale than I expected. Like the movie, I feel like the movie only gets to a certain point and then kind of stops in terms of exploring what its theme is. But in general, I enjoyed it, and I think this director finds interesting ways to show his monsters without really showing them.
Yeah.
And that's cool.
Yeah, I found this movie very interesting. I would say it's in the realm of I liked it. It's pretty good. Was it amazing? Nah.
No, it's not amazing, but
yeah, but it was definitely like I'm on the side of I liked this. It was good, but you kind of nailed it, which is that it did feel like it almost needed to be weirder. Or it needed, like, the impression I got of this film was that I think that it could have just been a supernatural thriller. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Where it was like, it felt like it didn't need to be a horror film. To the point that the thing that annoyed me the most was the use of jump scares. When they did use it, there was some parts where it felt like they had to have a scare because they're in this weird twilight between like, are we a horror movie or are we like a thriller? And ultimately, I think it would have worked better as like a creepy thriller.
I think
than
that's
trying to go for horror.
In my mind, that's what it was. Like, I didn't really clock this as a horror movie.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of reviews being like, this is kind of more of a drama. Because Rebecca Hall, I think it goes without saying, she's killing it in this movie.
Yeah, so when you're watching the movie, obviously she's the star, she's the person that they're pushing in the trailers, and then as the movie's beginning, you see her name in the credits as a producer. So you're like, oh, okay, there must be something to this movie then. And yeah, it's more of a drama. It's more of a character study on this woman going through grief and what it means for her personally, because she had a near-death experience herself and there was just nothing. So she's been terrified ever since that there's nothing after life, and then her husband dies very suddenly. So it's kind of about dealing with that. And
he does your classic rowboat suicide.
Yeah, he paddles out onto the middle of their creepy ass lake and shoots himself in the head. Yeah, no, I clocked this more as a thriller because I didn't. The moments you're talking about where they're jump scares, they're not even really jump scares. Like not.
There's one that made me go, oh boo. That it's really just one.
Yeah.
The part where she falls asleep. And then she just wakes up and the movie just screams at us.
Oh, that, yeah.
And that really bothered me because it startled me. It made me get anxious. And she like reacts, but I don't know what happened in the movie. It felt like she heard the soundtrack. Like she wakes up and there's just noise.
It shows you the stereo and then it cuts off.
Oh, right. The stereo is just making noise.
Yeah. And yeah.
Stuff like that, I was like, we don't need this.
Well, that's really the only time it happens.
I think there's one other, but yes. There's just, it felt like, it almost feels like it was, it could have been, probably not, but like a post-production note. Like, it just felt like they felt obligated to be scary.
I don't know.
In a few scenes that they didn't need to be. And it's a small note. It's not a big note. Because I think you're right. Largely, this is a supernatural thriller rather than a horror film.
Yeah,
I just think they could have leaned more into that, I guess.
Yeah,
and didn't have to worry.
I think that's my biggest issue with the film is that it doesn't. I liked the ending. I like where the character lands because it's not a happy ending.
No.
It's a real bleak ending.
It is. My audience just quietly shuffled out.
Yeah.
It was, yeah.
But I was hoping that the movie would do, because it's more of a supernatural thriller and even almost closer to just a straightforward drama that's just creepy in spots. I was hoping it would have more to say about the topic, and it doesn't really, and that's fine.
No.
But it seemed, because it doesn't have much to say, there's stretches of the movie that were like good at establishing tone, because it's almost kind of like a tone poem, really. But that ultimately, it kind of like as the movie's wrapping up, it kind of made me reflect on other earlier stretches of the movie and wondering, it's like, well, what were we going for here? Like, what was the point of this exercise?
Right. I think that I also think they could have explored more visually. I think that's the other issue I had with the stereo thing. Is it was like, it felt kind of like, oh, you can do better than that. I've seen you do better than that. Like in the Ritual.
Movie.
Yeah, and in this movie, yeah. And it's like, oh, you could, all right, so we should probably explain more about what this movie is, because what I like about this movie a lot is I always love a horror movie that does something visually that you just haven't seen before, or does a villain that you haven't seen before. And what it boils down to is the villain of this movie exists in negative space.
Yes. And that is a really, really cool idea.
Yes. So you're looking at an object and you're looking at another object, and the space between them forms the villain.
Yeah.
That's essentially what it is. And that's really cool. And the idea of this reverse house, I also thought was really cool. And I thought it was supposed to symbolize reflection. And that's when things started getting
muddy.
when they started to explain what the husband was up to, I was like, that's a little silly. And like, I just wish there was a little more to that side of it. To it being a little more surreal and like this being like an alternate dimension. Like, I wanted more of that almost explained or explored. Like, we don't spend that much time in that reverse house. That's like one scene.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, and it's there's like two scenes, but there's really only one. There's the scene where she finds it, and then there's the scene where she goes back and finds the bodies buried underneath it. Yeah, I thought this movie was going to have more to say. I thought the Nighthouse was going to. I mean, it does play a part, but we really don't. Like we just said, we only see it in two scenes. The idea is that she was in a car accident years before, had a near-death experience, encountered some being in the Deadlands, basically.
Right. Yeah, she describes it as, and this is such a the wordplay is both. I liked it, and I was both like, fuck you, because the husband, she says there was nothing. She experienced nothing when she died, and her husband constantly fought over that, and her husband's suicide note says, you're right, there is nothing. Nothing is out to get you. You're safe. Right? That's more or less what his suicide note says.
It says, nothing is out to get you. You're safe now.
What we learn is that the term nothing is referring to the being.
It's the being, yeah.
Yeah, he's saying something is out to get you. I'm calling it nothing.
Yeah.
And so anyway, go on.
So we find, I mean, the movie begins with the husband has already killed himself. He is dead. And as we get these pieces of the mystery as the movie unfolds, and we learn, as she learns, that her husband had built this reverse version of their home on the other side of the lake to trick this being. Basically, he built a maze to confuse it. And
right, the idea is that when it's almost Final Destination, where she almost died, and this entity is like,
attached to her. Yeah.
Yeah, I want her to die. I want her soul.
Yeah. I want your skulls.
Yeah, it's your skull.
So he builds this reverse house on the other side of the lake to trick the being, and starts bringing women to this reverse house that look like his wife, and killing them so that the entity can have them. And he's basically keeping this entity at bay at the expense of his own humanity. He's just murdering scores of women.
The way the movie rolls it out is she learns that her husband was a serial killer, essentially.
Yeah.
And then she learns why, that he was doing it all for her.
Mm-hmm.
She's not, like, thankful because, it's not like she got any say in it. What I found very funny about that was the idea that the demon could be tricked by just killing women who kind of look like her.
Well, it's funny. It's because I had that same thought. It's initially very funny, but then if you think about how the monster, the entity is presented in the movie, is we can't really see him either. Right. So it's just like we're seeing the impression of him. So it's like conceivably he also sees us the same way, where it's just kind of impressions and shapes and suggestions and. So it makes a little more sense.
It's still funny.
Yeah, it's still very funny.
It's funny that was the husband's plan, I guess, is that he's like, what if I just kill a bunch of women that look like her? And like what's happening is he probably said, what if I kill a woman who looks like her? He did that. The demon was like, thank you. Hey, wait a minute. And he was like, okay, for reals this time. For real this time. And then he killed another woman that looked like her. The demon was like, hey now. Like, he just kept doing it like 10 times.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's funny.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's very funny. It's like we only needed one of those two things, I think. I think we only needed him to either be building a 13 ghost puzzle house to trick this monster, or be killing lookalikes to trick this monster. We didn't need both, I don't think. But anyway.
I think what actually it is that I didn't need that elaborate or specific of an explanation. I would have rather explored the environment then have to have this weird lore where she died and then this ghost and then he's doing this ritual. Like, I would have rather have been like, he's trying to keep some sort of darkness away. That darkness is clearly affecting him.
Yeah.
Done.
Yeah.
Lore done.
Yeah. And I tend to agree. I will say, in this movie's defense, that is as complicated as the lore gets. Like, they don't over-explain it. They just give you kind of the bare minimum that you need to know.
Yeah, I do. The part that I think, from a screenwriting perspective, I could see being a studio note, or like they just like really had a headache, is there's a part where she literally has to sit and talk to the demon, and the demon has to explain everything. And that to me felt like that was, they had done such a good job of making you understand what was happening without having to do that. Mm-hmm. And then they have the demon just sort of give it like a James Bond villain speech. And I didn't mind it because, as we're pointing out, it's not really a horror movie. So like that would be something that would ruin a horror movie in my opinion. But a thriller like this, it's like, yeah, it's fine. But it did feel like they got stuck or something, and they're like, we need to explain this.
Yeah, and again, I tend to agree, but in the movie's defense, it doesn't say that much. Like, it's like, because we see it, like she gets bashed in the head and is in the reverse house and is suddenly seeing kind of like she's getting dragged down a corridor and passing rooms and seeing her husband murder different women as she passes each room. Like, they do a visual way of explaining it. All the demon really says himself is like Rebecca Hall says, he built this house and he used these women he tricked you. And then the demon says, for a while. And that's pretty much all they explain in terms of more verbally laying it out.
He explains the background of like,
right, like I saw you and I wanted you. Yeah. It's not too over the top. It's not egregious, but I tend to agree. Yeah.
A lot of the reviews talked about the ending as being a weak point, and I would agree. Where once she gets in, like once it is that vision, and she gets like bound in that. Like, I like the ending, the boat part. Mm-hmm. But I think that part got a little, like, over the top.
Where she levitates and gets bent back into the... I think that's part of it, right? Like, because they don't over-explain... They explain some stuff, but they don't over-explain other stuff, like that totem, that voodoo doll.
Right.
And the implication is that her husband, who is Deputy Nick from Bone Tomahawk, friend of the podcast... He's the guy that gets stabbed off the mountain in The Empty Man.
Oh, good for him.
And split in half down the middle in Bone Tomahawk.
Oh, he's having a tough time in movies.
He's having a tough time in horror movies. He's dead before this one even starts.
Yeah. He's evolved to be... In the last movie, he died in the beginning. This time, they're like, nah, he's
right,
not
like,
even...
in Bone Tomahawk, he dies like halfway through. Empty Man, he dies at the beginning. And in this man, he dies before the movie starts.
Directors look at him and they're like, I could really use him dead.
I need this guy to be dead in my movie.
Yeah, as soon as possible.
I lost what I was talking about.
Her getting bound in that totem.
Right, okay, so the implication is that he's cast some spell, something, and put it into this totem, because the totem is in the Nighthouse, and we get, she meets it's like the last woman that her husband flagged for murder, and then ultimately he took her to the reverse house, but he couldn't go through with it. He was just so beaten down at that point by all the horror that he had done that he was like, all right, I'm just gonna end it. So like right after he lets this woman go, who has no idea she was about to be murdered, but she's telling the story of how he took her out to this house and they had a kiss and he started to choke her and she said, no, I'm not really into that. And he stopped. But he had her touch this totem. So I think the totem is part of the ruse somehow.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
And then of course, when she brings the totem into her house, into the real house, not the reverse house, which I never would have done. Like, I don't necessarily believe in magic or supernatural or anything, but if I saw something like that and a fucked up mirror version of my house in the woods, I definitely wouldn't bring this horrible voodoo doll into my house.
Honestly, if only because it might have bugs in it. Like, there's a million reasons to not take it out. Yeah, no, the movie does a good job, and it doesn't have to. But when she brings it to her house, everybody is like, nope, don't do that.
Yeah, we know that's a mistake. It doesn't, but it doesn't over-explain it.
We don't know why. We just know that that's a mistake.
I wanted to get across the point that although we are flagging it a little bit for explaining more than it needs to, the movie it's not really one of those movies that over-explains things.
No, not at all. And in fact, most of the time it does a very good job at getting the information out.
Mm-hmm.
I would say it is good at that, which is why I flagged that moment as being like maybe a studio note. It actually reminds me of something I'm writing where it's like you don't want to give away too much, but you also want people to leave feeling like, okay, I know what happened. And I think this is a movie where they could have gone a little towards the more surreal or confusing, where like you leave and you're like, I think I might know what happened. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that would have been a neat a way to go with it, but I wasn't there when they were writing this. I get it. And it's overall a successful film. Like,
yeah, I appreciate it's a bleak ending. It's a bit rough for me personally right now.
Right.
Because the ultimate ending is that she basically accepts this nothing. Like the movie is basically about a woman discovering that there's nothing after this life, and she is making a sort of nihilistic, creepy peace with that.
Right, because it's the creature's literally the air between
negative space.
Negative space. It's a very bleak movie, but horror movie.
It's appropriate for a horror adjacent drama thriller. Yeah.
Yeah, I think what we're both getting at though is it was overall a good movie. And like we're saying, is like it felt like there just could have been more.
Could have been more. I wish it would have explored the theme a little more.
Yeah, and I think there's just a lot. Like, so the reverse house, it's across the lake, and at night so the way they do it is she's also just drinking nonstop.
Yes, she is constantly drunk,
as one would. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And she's falling asleep, and she's not getting enough sleep, and she's sleepwalking. So while they do a good job with this, is while we sort of know, like this is important because it's a movie, she herself is not entirely sure what's real. Like when she finds the bodies, she doesn't immediately call the cops.
No, she calls her friend.
In my head, I was like, fucking call the cops. But then when she's talking about it, she's like, I don't even know if it was real. And I'm like, yeah, that's fair. Like you're a mess.
Yeah, she is the hottest mess.
Yeah, and it makes it so that she's not an unreliable narrator to us. She's just not sure of herself constantly. So it's like weird visions where it's like she's first writes it off as dreams, but she's like, they really don't feel like dreams. The first one is her husband naked standing on the lake.
Yeah.
Which was weird.
That was dope.
Yeah, it was really creepy. I really liked it. And so there's this idea that her husband is the ghost. And I sort of saw it coming, but it was a great revelation where it's when she finally confronts the ghost, has a tender moment.
Yeah, she has the ghost moment almost, where it's the righteous brothers embracing this incorporeal being, and she's like, Owen, and the ghost says no.
No, I'm not Owen, man. And I liked how the ghost says it like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, I never said I was Owen.
Yeah, no, I never said that.
Yeah. And so it's like, oh shit. And that's a great thread of like, my husband's ghost is here, and then the reveal of like, oh, I'm not your husband's ghost, ma'am.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah, I've seen that before too.
I've seen it. Yeah, it's but it's nice and creepy when it's done well, and I think this movie does it well. This movie does a really good job with the sound design when the ghost is speaking to her.
Yeah, sound design is huge in this.
Yeah, it's real good. And she gets a couple of garbled phone calls that are supposedly from her dead husband, and those are done really well.
Yeah, it's real creepy shit.
Yeah.
But I guess what bugged me is that it's almost inconsistent. Because that first dream, I'm not quite sure where that fits into anything. Because she gets this dream where her husband is like texting her, and then the husband's like, look outside, and she calls him, and it's all gargled. And I know the idea is like, I'm drawing your attention, because I think the idea is the monster is trying to get her to that other house.
Yes.
And it's trying to get her to fuck up.
It's trying to get her to get the totem out. I think. But in that first dream, she looks outside. Her husband is standing on the lake, looking out towards where the house is.
Yeah, there was. I guess in the trailer they introduced this idea where that her husband built a reverse house, and it was going to look just like they show the dream version where it's like fully decorated.
Yeah.
And I almost wish it was more like that, because what happens is she has one dream, or not, where she gets on the boat and she goes across the lake and she finds this reverse house, and we learn that it's like a maze meant for the demon.
Yeah.
And I just wish that was more of the movie, because that was a cool idea.
Yeah,
I thought.
That's a creepy idea that you could do a lot with, and they don't. Yeah, they don't really spend any time in the reverse house. We see it twice, and we really only see one room of it. And it's not. It's just like a shanty. It's the same floor plan, but it's not like a finished house. He just kind of threw up some wood.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
It's more economical that way.
Yeah.
The demon doesn't know the difference. But yeah, I think that was like kind of the promise, and I think they just I think there was room for this to actually lean more towards horror or explore the idea of him existing in negative space. Really cool idea that they also don't play with that much. There's like a couple of shots, and then it's just like Invisible Man. And like the Invisible Man stuff, I was like, meh, we've sort of, it would have been cool to find a more surreal way of doing a haunting. And again, the stereo turning on, it was like, I don't know why it keeps doing this. There'd be cooler ways to do this, I think. It's effective, but it introduces such unique elements that I wish it just had spent a lot more time with them. And I don't know how exactly.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Because I don't know that I necessarily want them to show more of the ghost, because I think what we got was partially so effective because it's used pretty sparingly.
That's true. I don't mean the ghost itself. I just mean that world, or that just like doing more unique stuff.
Yeah, more surreal ideas, like the idea of a being that exists in negative space.
Yeah, and I like exploring the supernatural when it's something new, and that is something new.
Yeah,
and like I look at a film like The Babadook, which is also dealing with grief, and the Babadook itself is a funny monster.
Yeah.
But they do stuff where she's watching TV and like things are popping up on the TV.
Yeah, things
you know what I mean?
Creepy in the TV.
Yeah, where it's like these are like things like that, where it's like, why not play with it a little more in a unique way, as opposed to just doing like, oh, they're bloody footsteps, or oh, the stereo turns on, and it's like it's sort of the stuff leading up. I love the shot where she slowly looks over and looks down the hallway, and you realize the negative space not only creates the creature, but the creature is very close.
Yes.
Yeah. I loved that. I was like,
that's
shit.
The scene where it spots her and then gets big.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, shit.
Yeah. There's some great stuff like that.
Yeah. It's such a cool idea.
It really is. And like, it's the kind of idea that's like, I could see it in a video game. I could see it in a lot of things. It's just a cool way to depict an otherworldly being where it's not just a fucking ghost. And so, yeah, I don't know. I think exploring that more, would have been fun.
It felt like comparing it to The Ritual, which was this director's previous film, which is also a horror movie that is also dealing with trauma.
Yeah.
I think that movie did a more complete job of engaging with its theme than this one does. Like, it feels like the movie introduces the theme and then kind of treads water for a little bit before arriving at its conclusion, which is, that ending is woof. It's a good ending. I just wish there was more in between. Like, I wish there was more. I wish there was more meat in this burger. It's basically what I'm coming down to.
Yeah, because there's it's an exploration of Rebecca Hall's character more than it is anything else.
Yes, yeah.
And so, like, the ritual, for example, it's the ritual is very Blair Witchy, where it's a group of friends lost in the woods.
Yeah.
There's hostilities. We don't have to get into it, but then what is happening is relatively simple and straightforward. They don't explain a lot because they don't need to.
They don't need to.
It's just like, it's this and this and this. All right, we're good. Like, it's not as surreal or abstract, the answer. This felt like they had to spend a lot of time on her and her grief. There's a lot of scenes where she's just like, there's a whole thing between her and her friend, her and her neighbor / landlord. I don't know.
I don't think he's her landlord.
Handyman. He's like handyman.
He is. I think he's just offering to help because he's the neighbor and her husband has just died. So he's like, I can get rid of this boat if you want me to get rid of this boat, stuff like that. Yeah,
I got like that. Like, it's like that. I'm your neighbor, but I also own a lot of land. I don't know. It doesn't matter. He's a good character though.
Yeah, I like that actor a lot. Vondi Curtis Hall. For some reason, like, he's had a very long, illustrious career, but for some reason, the movie I always immediately think of every time I see him is Die Hard 2. He's one of the
which movie?
Die Hard 2. He's one of the henchmen in Die Hard 2.
Is he really?
Yeah, he's the one that Bill Sadler almost shoots. You remember where he's like he's telling them about how he's one of the thugs that Bruce Willis fights with in the baggage terminal, and the one guy gets crushed by the baggage thing. And so this actor, Vondi Curtis Hall, is reporting to Bill Sadler. He's like, yeah, we got the stuff planted, but we lost Cochran. And he's like, well, then you accomplished your mission. He's like, yeah, but Cochran, sir. And then Bill Sadler points a gun at him, and he's like, the penalty is severe. But then he doesn't shoot him, and he's like, just remember, next time the chamber won't be empty. That's that actor.
Right. That's wonderful.
He plays a random henchman in Die Hard 2. He makes it all the way to the end. He gets blown up on the airplane at the end.
Good for him.
Yeah.
I'm looking him up. He's also in Broken Arrow.
He's in Daredevil. He's in the first season of Daredevil. He's Ben Urich.
He is. Yeah. That's where I knew him.
Yeah. But yes, I always think of Die Hard 2 every time I see him.
Yeah. God, Die Hard 2.
Yep.
What a film. What a great film.
Great film, yeah.
Shit, what were we talking about?
We were just talking about, how it's more of an exploration of her character.
Yeah, because she's very, like, she's kind of a dick, and it's not in a way of like, oh, what a dick. It's like, oh, yeah, her husband just shot himself.
Her husband shot himself.
She's not dealing with things. It's more like...
out of the blue.
Yeah. There's little things like she came to work and they're like, you don't have to be here. And she's like, yeah, it's fine. And then she's just like, clearly shouldn't be working.
No.
And it's stuff like that where she's not handling it well. That's the way to put it.
No. Well, I mean, like we said, they don't really point a finger at it, and nobody really like scolds her about it or anything, but she drinks constantly. And that's definitely a major element that we are supposed to recognize as the audience.
Right. It's one of those scenarios where you're watching her and you're like, I would do everything she's doing in this scenario. However, if my friend was doing this, I'd say, nope, we're getting involved. Like, we're going to get... Like, that's the thing. It's like, her friend kind of needed to do more. When her friend is like, come on, just stay here. And she's like, no, I'll go stay at a hotel. The friend has to be like, no, I'm going with you to your house. I'm hanging out with you. Yeah. You are in a dark, dark place.
It's hard. Like, I mean, it's hard sometimes.
Yeah. Oh no. They do the right thing where she has kids. Life is in the way.
Yeah.
They do a good enough job with it that it's like I liked the neighbor who's like clearly not friends with her.
Right. No, they're not. They're friendly, but they're not friends.
Yeah. And he says, like, you need to go to somebody.
Yeah.
It's like you need a friend or family. Because
anyone?
It's not me. It's not going to be me.
Yeah.
But, like... and so they do a decent job at that. The point is that most of the movie is about that.
Yes.
They have scenes of her at work. They have scenes of her dealing with friends, getting too drunk, saying stuff. And they use those to get out exposition too. But it all comes to like this. It's just a very hard balancing act because they want it to culminate to this moment where she's crying and says to her husband, "I miss you so much."
Mm-hmm.
But we already kind of know that he murdered a lot of women. And so it's like this.
Both of those things can be true.
Yes. And that's what they're exploring. And the idea that she says, like, the woman says, "I didn't know him well." And she says, apparently neither did I.
Yeah.
That's the idea. But I feel like they're kind of on the fence of the idea of, is this about grief or is it about learning darkness on someone else's darkness and dealing with that idea? And it's a very complicated emotional process that she's going through that has to take up a lot of the movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's okay if the villain, the supernatural entity, was simple. Because that's what makes the Babadook work, is the Babadook is simple. He's just, I am the Babadook.
I think this villain is pretty simple.
Yeah, but I think the lore and the surreal stuff, I think that's why that had to take a back seat ultimately. Why there's not enough meat is because they had to juggle a lot of elements. And I think that what sort of had to be sacrificed was what we're saying feels like the movie doesn't have, which is more meat. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, I think the movie does a lot of her. It does a lot with the mystery of finding out what her husband was up to, and it does a lot with her having spooky encounters at night with this spirit.
Yeah.
So while the ghost itself I don't think is too complicated, it does dwell a lot on the haunted house aspects of it for sure.
Yeah, I think there's a more stripped down version of this.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you look at something like It Follows, where, again, it's just, it follows you. And you have sex, you pass it on. Good, we're done. Where it can be even simpler. And the villain can stay unique. It can exist in that negative space. I just think there's a lot that they had to deal with. And that's why it's a very good movie. The director did a great job. Everybody did a great job.
Mm-hmm.
I think they bit off a lot. And,
I think
the chewing.
Yeah.
The chewing part.
I think what this is the stripped down, or is a stripped down version of this idea. But I think it cut too much to the bone in some areas, I think. I feel like. I
also think they could make up for that by, like, she finds the backwards house about the halfway point.
Mm-hmm.
If they had started with that
should have happened earlier. Yeah.
What I was thinking, this is how I thought it was going to happen, is a lawyer was going to show up and be like, "So about your husband's other land." You know what I mean? And then her to be like, "What other land?"
Mm-hmm.
And then bam, backwards house. And then we're in. Yeah, I think they could have, I don't know, had a little more time there. Or not. I mean, the movie got made.
Yeah, I mean, it could have just been I think what they did in the film works. So she just looks out of her window one night and sees a fucking light in a window on the other side of the lake where there's not normally a house. So the next morning she walks over there and she finds the house. That works for me. I just think it should have happened earlier.
Yeah, it probably should have happened earlier.
And then we could have done more with the reverse house. It almost feels like the second house almost feels like an afterthought. It's like it's almost incidental.
Most of the haunting takes place in her regular
house. Yeah,
that's what I thought.
In point of fact, all of the haunting takes place in her regular house.
Right. I thought it was going to be like, oh, my husband built this other house, I'm going to spend time there. And then it's like, oh, it's a demon house and you can't escape or something. But yeah, the other house, it really is like, it's just a story element that comes and goes.
Yeah.
They don't even do like creepy stuff there. When the moment she goes to the abandoned house at night, I was like, here we go. And then she just finds bodies and leaves.
Yeah, that discovery is pretty...
Oh, it's creepy. But you know what I mean? It's like, I thought like, oh, we're going to do a lot of creepy shit here.
like a puzzle house.
Right. Yeah, that's the thing. They kept implying mazes and puzzles, and they never paid that off.
No.
In terms of like scares or scenarios.
Right. It served its purpose in the story, but not like as a vehicle for delivering scares.
Yeah, what's that movie with the old lady that's clearly about dementia where they like go through the walls? You know the movie.
Oh crap. It's the one with Relic? No, not Relic.
Is it Relic?
It might be Relic.
That's, I don't know. People are shouting
it's the one with Emily Mortimer. It came out last year.
Yeah. I was expecting a little more like that.
Yeah.
Where it's like, this house doesn't make sense. We're trapped.
Mm-hmm.
It's weird. It's creepy.
Well, the idea was like the notion of building a mystery house to trick an evil spirit. That's a premise right there. And in here, it's kind of just like a detail that moves the story forward. Like they don't really spend any time on that puzzle house.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, and the title of the Nighthouse.
Yeah, that's a heck of an offer. Let's run with that.
Yeah. Just
what would
just
that look
alone.
like? I want to see what that looks like.
Yeah, and that idea of like you're in this house. You can't escape. It's a weird maze, and there's a demon also in the house. Mm-hmm. Like that alone is like, oh yeah, it's like a chase thing. There's a lot there. Obviously, it's not. It's just not the movie they were telling.
It's not the movie they were telling. No,
but it is true that like why introduce that house? Like it could have literally just been like a box. You know what I mean? It didn't even have to be another property because of how little they use it. It could have been a gazebo. Mm-hmm. It could have been the night gazebo, and it could have just been a gazebo that he built. Like it the fact that it's an opposite mirror house never comes into play in any meaningful way.
Yeah.
And yeah, that I think that's it. I think that's the heart of what bothered me.
Yeah.
But man, this guy's talented, and everybody is talented, and I can't wait to see what he has to do next.
Yeah, for sure.
You know?
What's the director's name? David Bruckner.
Yeah. And yeah, he's if people haven't seen The Ritual yet, The Ritual
it's good. It's on Netflix.
Yeah, that's the movie where you watch it and you're like, "Oh yeah, I know why." He got more movies. He also did, I think, a section of Southbound, mm-hmm. which is a great film. And this, people should see this. He is doing Hellraiser next, Tom.
Nice.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. I'd say if pandemic's really bad, wait for streaming for this one.
I don't think you necessarily need to rush to the theater to see this one.
No, I don't think so either.
It's honestly, it's kind of surprising that they gave it a wide theatrical release right now.
Yeah, and we've talked about this where it's like stuff like horror movies are kind of better watching at home.
Yeah,
like
personally, I had a row of dipshit teenagers in my showing who wouldn't shut the entire fuck up.
This is not a movie for like, woo, we're teens. Like that's not.
Well,
yeah, we're gonna watch her experience grief.
They came in 30 minutes late and just did not stop talking at regular volume for like the entire film. Yeah.
I always, I wish I could. We gotta learn like witchcraft. Like I wish I could like suck the energy out of people like that. Young,
and
happy
claim
teens.
It for myself. Yeah.
Yeah, I want them to feel what my bones feel.
Can I? I would be a ghoul. Like if any demon or dark bargainer is out there and wants me to make a trade, I will be a ghoul if I can feed on the youthful energy of others.
Right. There's a reason Jason Voorhees is the hero. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we all understand this.
Yeah,
no one likes teenagers.
It's because teens suck.
Not even teenagers like themselves.
No.
So
yeah, that's when you realize I think that's why so many teenagers struggle with depression. It's you suddenly realize that you're a teenager and you suck.
Yeah, that's what being an emo or a goth is. It's like I'm going to dress all in black so I'm less visible for adults. I'm trying to take the edge off, make it easier for adults. I won't talk. I'll put my hair in front of my face. It's fine. You don't even just see my shitty face.
Yeah. I want to hide from the bitter truth of my own teenageness.
Right, and it's like, thank you.
Yeah. All right.
Listen, folks, we have a Patreon.
We sure do.
Patreon.com/gamefullyunemployed. You can go on there. You can, for $5 a month, you get exclusive podcasts like Tom and Jeff Watch Batman, and Fox Mulder is a Maniac, and Star Trek: The Next Futurama.
Woo.
It's all on there. Go check it out. You'll love it.
Yeah, you'll get a kick out of it. We also have a store. Head over to GameFullyUnemployed.com. We've got the link to our new Teespring store over there, where you can get T-shirts and masks and mugs and all kinds of stuff. So check that out.
I got the Fox Squatch shirt.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah, I did. It's beautiful.
Just Fox Mulder as Sasquatch. We have a lot of really fun designs that you should definitely check out if you are a fan of our shows.
Yeah. Yeah, and you are. You love us.
Yeah. Otherwise, what are you doing here? I don't get it. I don't get it.
What's the point of anything if you don't love us?
But leave us a review before you leave, if you would.
Yeah, love us. Love us with your reviews.
Feed me your love, so I can begin my journey as a ghoul.
Yeah, let's be ghouls.
Let's be ghouls. Seems like the way to go.